Martin Mertens, Mr. M, Dad the Human, whoever you prefer, is one of the most interesting characters in all of Adventure Time to me. Despite just looking like the typical deadbeat dad, he's got quite the colorful past that makes his actions feel more justified than they would have if the show never dug deeper into his character. His voice actor being Stephen Root is also a very nice bonus. So because of the insane support my video on the Lit received, I wanted to make this video covering the full story of Martin Mertens. Quick spoiler warning for those who haven't consumed all of the main Adventure Time content, Fiona and Cake included. Also, if you would like to see more of these videos in the future, don't be a stranger to subscribing with the bell turned on. Martin spent his early days on Hub Island, one of the few islands humans lived on far, far away from the land of Oo, spending most of his time gambling, swindling others, and generally getting into trouble. One day, Martin was taking a stroll around town, not even looking both ways when crossing the street. A local island helper, Minerva Campbell, almost ran him over and screamed at him angrily, but he didn't even hear her due to the pink earbuds he was using. Eventually, Martin reaches the local park, where he meets with two people to discuss leaving the island, which is something that has been strictly forbidden due to the fear of the outside world's environment, courtesy of the Mushroom War, of course. Martin makes a deal to help these people escape the island if they give him some gadgets in return. He tells them to go to the coast, but simultaneously alerts the Seekers, which are essentially the island's law enforcement, about these two people trying to leave, allowing him to keep the gadgets and not have to do more work on the beach, essentially, playing both sides. Though as he tries to leave the park area, he's stopped by a woman named the Widow and her bodyguard who demands safe passage out of the island. He tries to tell her the same thing he told the others, just to go to the beach, but she demanded Martin go to the beach with her. Unfortunately, he was sort of forced to agree to this deal because he was outnumbered and outsized by that bodyguard in particular. Of course, the Seekers are already on their way to the beach because of the inside info Martin gave them, so they're able to get everyone at the beach, Martin included, who attempted to hide inside of a boat but was still found by Susan Strong. He tries to make a break for it but was no match for Susan's strength and aim, where she throws the boat on top of him, breaking his legs in the process. Susan would bring Martin back to the island's hospital where he would be put into the care of Minerva Campbell. He tries to escape by putting on a cool charm for Minerva, but only ends up hurting himself even more, resulting in him needing further medical attention and being put in a near full body cast. The two continue to spend more time together and eventually develop a mutual attraction towards one another, with Martin even saying he'll take Minerva on a date if he's able to avoid the re-education program the system wants to put him in for trying to quote-unquote escape the island. The next morning, some Seekers show up to take Martin to his re-education by force, but Minerva intervenes and gives them a fake story about how Martin has some made-up medical condition called garbage body, which makes him unfit for re-ed. Martin thanks her for saving him, but she hasn't forgotten his promise to take her out. For presumably the next year or so, we'd get little glimpses of Marty and Min's love life together. From their first dinner date, where Martin tries to pay with a jewel he found in his boot, Minerva winning tons of awards for her hard work as a helper, and the birth of their first and only child, Finn Mertens. At one point in the future, when baby Finn was slightly older, Minerva left Finn with Martin for the day while she went in for a work shift. Martin and Finn spend some quality father-son time together for the whole day while waiting for some food delivery to show up, when all of a sudden, the Widow and her goons break into Martin's house as revenge for getting them caught on the beach. Martin quickly jumps through the house's window with Finn and starts running for his life, planning to take a raft out to the ocean for temporary safety. He successfully gets pretty deep into the ocean and tries to text Minerva the details of the situation at hand, but before he can send the message, the island's guardian that prevents humans from leaving emerges from the ocean. It tries to strike Martin down, but the wind allows his raft to dodge it. Worried for the safety of Finn, he musters the courage to jump into the ocean, telling baby Finn he'll be back for him. Martin is able to climb across the guardian's arm and safely land on its face when he uses a laser gadget to override its left eye, causing it to explode. However, the explosion is so powerful that Martin gets pushed into the ocean and presumably suffers a serious head injury in the process, leaving Finn, Martin, and Minerva completely separated in different locations, which would remain the case with this family for years to come. Due to this apparent head injury from the Guardian, Martin not only forgets a lot of the details of his happy family life with Minerva and Finn, but returns to his old swindling ways, arguably becoming even more selfish than he was in his younger days. Now, presumably 3 to 4 years after Finn and Martin got separated, he would find work on a space station called the Drift, specifically becoming the assistant to Hugo, the station's self-appointed leader. Martin in particular would go by the name Mr. M during his duration on the Drift. At some point, Martin and Hugo would encounter BMO during this time period, who was on a mission to terraform Mars. BMO ends up destroying a transmogger that the elves were supposed to give to Mr. M, but Mr. M suggests that the elves go back and salvage the broken pieces, while he says he'll handle giving Hugo the rundown of everything. Mr. M eventually catches up to them inside the Drift station after a bunch of gravity surges shake the place up. He proceeds to take BMO and BMO's friend Y5 to the Unity pod, claiming it to be the key to solving all the Drift's problems, but at the potential expense of BMO's body. Mr. M delivers BMO to Hugo, with Y5 having second thoughts about doing this to someone she came to consider a friend, but she keeps telling herself that it's for the greater good of the Drift. Meanwhile, Mr. M takes her to another part of the area to play a game with her to keep her busy, wagering that if he wins the game, he gets her gravity boots, and if she wins, she gets his beat-up work boots. A classic Martin gamble. He ends up winning the game too after Y5 gets distracted and fat fingers the wrong play. At least BMO's life ended up being saved because Hugo couldn't find any parts inside him worth using. But BMO decides to help in another way by saying he'll go into the most dangerous part of the drift to retrieve the true final piece for the Unity pod. Something that Mr. M signs off on too. After BMO finds out about Y5's original intentions, he gets mad with her and decides to go get the final part of the Unity pod solo, with Mr. M co-signing this decision about how cool guys like them don't need anybody else. When they arrive, only BMO walks in at first because Mr. M claims he has to stay outside the area to guide BMO with a map, which makes zero sense, but BMO falls for Martin's mind games anyway. Mr. M does end up guiding BMO to the crystal, but what he doesn't know is that this final crystal actually causes the pod to fail, which means it's technically doing more overall damage to the drift than good. BMO makes a mad dash for the now automatic closing door and throws the crystal to Mr. M, but isn't fast enough to make it outside himself, which Mr. M says is unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
Y5 tries to expose Mr. M for allowing this to happen, but her parents run into her and don't believe her, allowing Mr. M to confiscate the evidence in question. And the last time we see Mr. M is when he tries to hightail it out of the drift after he and Hugo's true intentions end up being revealed to all the residents, where he clings onto the flying Unity pod and eventually slips loose, drifting into the void of space. At some point after this, Martin would commit one or several cosmic crimes that would get him imprisoned in the Citadel, a prison where the most dangerous criminals in the multiverse are kept imprisoned inside crystals. All this time, Finn doesn't even know that Martin's alive until the spirit of Billy sends him a message from heaven about Martin's existence. Finn and Jake are able to get there thanks to following the Lich there when he commits the cosmic crime of waking up the old man responsible for Prismo's existence. However, when Finn reveals himself as Martin's son, he naturally has trouble remembering what happened or, is Finn even existing? All while the Citadel is in an uproar because of the Lich's powers. And because of this, Martin is struck in the leg by a stray Crystal Guardian laser. So Finn has to get some of their blood to heal Martin. But once Martin has gotten what he wants, he tries to bail away from Finn again. He and a bunch of other prisoners try to fly out into space as quick as possible. Finn definitely tried his damnedest to stop their escape, but his grass arm just wasn't strong enough, resulting in Finn losing his right arm and Martin getting away.
Hey, what about Eric?
Martin briefly appears once again in the Season 6 episode Astral Plane, where his presence in space is initially believed to be one of the Catalyst comets. Grobgob ends up trying to strike it down, forcing it to plummet towards Earth, but in actuality, it wasn't a Catalyst comet. It was Martin inside a malfunctioning spaceship about to crash land on New. The spot where Martin landed ended up being in an area where some small villagers lived, so he took it upon himself to manipulate them by pretending to be a tree spirit and having them build an escape pod for him. Finn ends up finding this village in the Season 6 episode The Visitor after sleepwalking to the ship's location for 2 days straight, which was stemmed from another dream about a Catalyst comet. Finn is able to immediately recognize Martin's voice when he pretends to act like the tree spirit. Martin tries to sell Finn some story about how he lost his arm during the crash, which Finn believes at first, but it was all a lie, which Finn of course does not appreciate. But in a classic Martin fashion, he just tries to brush it off. Martin continues to make the small villagers build the escape pod, and Finn lets it happen for the time being, due to Martin claiming the little guys like doing it. Plus, once the escape pod is finished, he'll be out of Finn's hair, something he thinks is good for Finn, but Finn of course still wants to spend some kind of time with Martin to tie up the loose ends in their relationship, despite how much their personalities clash. Eventually, Martin, Finn, and the babies go to the main spaceship to retrieve the steering wheel needed for the escape pod. Despite how dangerous it looks to reach the part, the little guys go for it anyway, which Finn continues to disapprove of. At least Martin kind of tries to make up for it later that night by throwing some kind of campfire corn party. That same night, Finn tries to get Martin to open up more about their past together, and Martin attempts to remember what truly happened, but can't remember most of these specific events. All he could remember was how he and Finn were on a raft together at some point and how he planned to come back for Finn, but he didn't. Same goes for his relationship with Minerva. Clearly the amnesia really did a number on him. The following morning, Martin tries to hightail it out of the village since his escape pod is finished and the original ship is about to explode. Martin apparently knew how to fix the problem the entire time, but didn't do it himself or tell Finn soon enough, so Finn sends Martin flying away in the escape pod in a fit of rage with the roof still open. And he's able to save the villagers shortly after too, thankfully. The Season 6 episode On the Lam has Martin a part of a chain gang on some distant planet, supposedly for betting on lard fights, but he's able to quickly escape and befriend a local koala person whom he nicknames Martin 2. Martin 2 takes Martin back to his home, where they offer him milk from their giant space moth. Martin doesn't like the milk though and plans to just sell the moth for some quick cash, which he was able to pull off under the lie of using the moth to get the koala rebellion better food than the moth milk. Martin 2 doesn't appreciate this, but Martin just just, tells him to get over it, so they end up going to a bar. And the bartender recognizes them as escaped prisoners and tries to get them captured. After running for a bit, Martin ditches Martin 2 because he realizes the cops want Martin 2 more than him, because Martin 2 is kind of the leader of the rebellion. Martin 2 was also an old man the entire time, which was pretty funny.
Well, see ya!
As Martin tries to get away from that situation as fast as possible, he's able to get the space moth back on top of more treasures from the planet's ruler's room, allowing him to escape back into space with tons of riches. Martin spends quite a bit of time flying through space and is seen again in the episode The Comet, where he finds Finn floating through space after his chase with Orgolorg ended poorly. The two of them meeting in space was purely coincidence, and Martin decides to save Finn. Finn wants to help Jake too, but Martin claims the space moth is beyond controlling, so they gotta just go with the flow on this one. But by a stroke of luck, they're able to reach Orgolorg's location. Finn's able to defeat Orgolorg and free the catalyst comet that he was trying to absorb, where it offers Finn a proposition on living in a new form of existence if he wants to. Though Finn wants to continue to live his normal life because he doesn't want to leave all the friends he's made behind. So Martin takes it upon himself to take Finn's place if the comet allows it. Finn's not happy about Martin, trying to take the easy way out again, but Martin says if you get to a point in life where you make enough enemies, then the only way to move is forward. It's probably some of the wisest words he said in the entire series, I'm not gonna lie. Finn accepts that his dad won't change, and the two of them say their final goodbyes as Martin starts his new life, where it's still unknown if he was reincarnated into a new being or if he's in a new dimension or something like that. What's for sure is the original Martin is no more. Even though I say this, I still want to include the last bit of him from the Adventure Time sequel series Fiona and Cake. During Fiona, Cake, and Simon's adventures throughout the multiverse to find another magic crown, they land in a post-apocalyptic version of Ooh, one where that version of Simon Petrikov died before he met a young Marceline, resulting in vampires running rampant and this world's version of Princess Bubblegum commanding an army to defeat the vampires. A different version of Martin was a part of this army as the ammunitions expert. Despite looking near identical to the main Martin we've seen throughout regular Adventure Time, this Martin was a lot more selfless than selfish, which makes me think he never received any kind of head injuries in the past to force him back into bad habits, even showing lots of fatherly tendencies around the baby universe version of Finn that snuck into the vampire world with Fiona's group. Just a lot more likable personality-wise. Unfortunately, this Martin met a tragic end when the evil Marceline sucked the soul out of him and completely drained his blood afterwards. At least he went out in a very noble way, helping Fiona stay alive. Rest in peace, big guy. Rest in peace.